From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, this is Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Riley Smith. In today's show, Dustin continues his conversation with Department of the Interior Associate Deputy Secretary Karen Budd-Falen. Mark has a clip from the June episode of Pods of Potential, and we hear from Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds and Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig during yesterday's bill signing at the Iowa Capitol. Again, I'm Riley Smith, one of your hosts for today, and joining me now is Mark Magnuson. And Mark, very important day. If you haven't got out already, it is a voting period for the Iowa primaries, so make sure you do your civic duty and get out and vote.
Yes, and if you don't know where your voting location is, and you can find that online, I think you just go to the various government websites and you're able to type in your zip code and you'll be able to find out where you are supposed to go vote so you can get that figured out. And speaking of important days, yesterday, Riley, was also an important day at the Iowa State Capitol as a couple of bills were signed by Governor Kim Reynolds into law. And one of those was more or less a agriculture and natural resources appropriations bill, but it did include the farm to faucet water quality package. And we will hear from Governor Reynolds and Secretary Naig talking about the importance of that water quality package in that bill coming up later in the show. And also, the other bill that was signed into law was the Iowa Farm Act. The very first Iowa Farm Act aims to modernize how Iowa supports, regulates, and promotes Iowa agriculture. So a big day for Iowa ag at the Capitol yesterday. Also had an event on the Capitol steps for John Deere, talking about its new tractor that is able to use renewable fuels, and it does away with some of the excise taxes that go into being able to power that farm equipment with renewable fuels. And it was an interesting look at that, kind of the future of farming in that respect. And that took place on the steps of the Iowa Capitol yesterday with the John Deere tractor right up there on the Capitol steps as well. So that was a cool event yesterday. And that was kind of the kickoff to our busy week this week, as of course, we have World Pork Expo coming up beginning tomorrow. That will run Wednesday and Thursday at the Iowa State Fairgrounds here in Des Moines. And Riley, I know we're looking forward to that event. What is kind of your favorite part about World Pork Expo when you think about covering it over the last few years?
Well, if I can be completely honest, it's the free ribs at the fairgrounds that I believe, isn't it the Tama County pork producers provide us? Big shout out to them. They always make sure that we're fed at the show. But in all honesty, it's the press conferences that happen, specifically the National Pork Producers Council press conferences that happen in the FFA building on the fairgrounds. There's just so much information that comes out all at once at these events, and you're also getting, the industry leaders, which, naturally in Iowa, if you're talking the swine industry, a lot of that is focused here. I mean, you've got National Pork Board and NPPC pretty much across the street from each other. And there's just a lot of things that just get talked about at the show that really don't get talked about outside of it. I mean, how much do we really talk about the swine industry and its biggest problems throughout the rest of the year? It kind of does become in the shadow of the cattle industry, and the livestock in general is in the shadow of the grain industry. I mean, grains, you're looking at the war in Iran, you're looking at weather issues at this time of year, trade deals with China. There's so many things factoring into that, but that doesn't mean that the livestock industry doesn't have its own things to be looking at. And we will get to the livestock industry, the livestock markets later on in the show, but first, we are going to talk with Joe Camp of Comstock for a check of the grain markets.
Joined today by Joe Camp of Comstock for the opening market discussion. Joe, what's happening with the trade in the grains?
Lower again here. We look at corn in particular, really giving it up over the past 6 or 7 sessions, basically down 7 out of the last 8 here. If we hold lower today, we have a break to new lows for the move down below the bottom from April, and now eyeing this next point of support, the year's low back in early January at 445 for the December contract. There's a bigger weather focus and a more negative one at that. This follows up the crop progress report on Monday afternoon. The first crop condition ratings weren't quite as favorable as expected, but still well enough off for the average. You see this 67% good to excellent corn score and 66% on the soybeans. And it's a focus on the general having enough weather-wise for now, as opposed to how there are still some extreme ends of both too wet and too dry. It looks like the forecast immediately ahead is going to provide what's needed, both warmer, drier conditions in the north and the east, and some rainfall potential in the south and the west. So a lower trade here for now for these grains.
Joe, have we seen any kind of follow through from China since the meeting with President Trump headed to that country?
We have not, and that's part of the letdown that this market is experiencing. That you had 2 Sundays ago, this White House fact sheet come out, that following, of course, the President Trump Xi Jinping meeting in China, where China had committed purportedly to buying $17 billion worth of agricultural purchases in addition to the soybean promises that they made last fall, and yet no flash sales immediately popping up to confirm China's resolve to follow through. We looked, though, at past examples, including as recently as last fall with those soybean purchase promises, and we know that it can take some time before they develop, and that there can be questions over the time frame, over the terms of the deal. We had questioned whether it was 12 million tons for the current year or the current marketing year or through February or what have you. The uncertainty was something that became more of a negative until those flash sales did start popping up. China reached that 12 million metric ton target, but they have not started yet on the 25 million tons that they had committed to buying for the next 3 seasons, and they have not advanced towards any of that $17 billion worth of other crops. It's something that can pop up at any moment. If it's like the phase 1 trade deal, it can take some time, but then it can really start to impress that demand has returned if it does.
Every county fair has that special person or family. They are there before the gates open and long after the lights go out, helping families with projects and pitching in wherever they're needed, never asking for recognition. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, along with Wiffles Hybrids, is honoring them with the Heart of the County Fair Award. 6 winners will be recognized locally and at the Iowa State Fair with a plaque, cash prize, VIP passes, and food coupons. Don't delay. Nominations are due June 1st. Visit iowaagnet.com to nominate today.
Welcome back to Iowa Ag Matters. Riley Smith on the show today, filling in for Dustin Huffman. Mark Magnuson joining me as well. And as you remember, Dustin was out in Washington, D.C. earlier this year. Also had the chance to visit with the Department of the Interior to talk about some of the things they're doing with the wild horse population out west.
As we continue hearing from Karen Budd-Falen, the Associate Deputy Secretary of the Department of the Interior, she was asked about the situation with wild horses out in the West and how that situation is playing out and how the Interior plans to handle that.
So Department of Interior is actually working on a rangeland health initiative. It's not just wolves that are a problem. This is a horrible drought year. You look at, the ranch that we've got in Wyoming, you look at my in-laws' ranches in Nevada, there's no feed. And it's really sad because people are pushing on agriculture, to breed more heifers, to build the herd. It's really hard to do that when there's nothing to feed them. And that's Mother Nature, and Washington does lots of things. I have not talked to anybody that can make it rain, so the weather is kind of what it is. So Interior is working on a rangeland health initiative because if you look at the grazing of wild horses, they can destroy the land that they're living on. They tromp out water holes, and it's not just bad for the land, it's bad for the horses. And so we are putting together a plan that we should be able to release soon that is based on the health of the rangeland, looking at more gathers, looking at more options to get horses off the land. The trade-off is that we put the horses in holding, and it's really expensive to feed a horse in holding. But consider the trade-off. We either truly destroy the range, particularly in Nevada, where you have species like white sage that you can't just go out and replant, or we figure out how to pay for horses in long-term holding under the current laws we have. It's a horrible, horrible choice.
This was asked to be clarified, and when it comes to places like Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota, where these wild horses have a chance to roam free, and how they're going to be handled there.
No, he has. But you have to look at the circumstances. The horses in Theodore Roosevelt National Park are at a proper management level, and they are able to manage the horse's pregnancy rate with Gonacon, which is a contraceptive that you apply every couple of years, so that that population doesn't exceed the carrying capacity of the park. Department of Interior is completely supportive of areas where the population hasn't exploded so much that it's imbalanced with the resources. You're talking about a lot of places where the population is so big, no matter how much contraceptive you apply, you're not going to be able to get the horses down to what the technical term is AML. And so people will say, oh, Secretary of the Interior supports wild horses. No, he supports well-managed wild horses in balance with the resource, not just wild horses destroying the range, eliminating livestock grazing, and eliminating water resources that are used by livestock and wildlife.
Every county fair has that special person or family. They are there before the gates open and long after the lights go out, helping families with projects and pitching in wherever they're needed, never asking for recognition. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, along with Wiffles Hybrids, is honoring them with the Heart of the County Fair Award. 6 winners will be recognized locally and at the Iowa State Fair, with a plaque, cash prize, VIP passes, and food coupons. Don't delay. Nominations are due June 1st. Visit iowaagnet.com to nominate today.
Your local radio station brings you the local news you depend on. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network complements that with ag news, weather, and market updates tailored for Iowa's farmers. Together, we deliver the best of both worlds, local connection and industry expertise. It's all to keep you connected with the heartbeat of the heartland. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, connecting rural Iowa with the news that matters to you. It's time now for a check of the statewide cash basis prices here on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Riley Smith. Taking a look at cash corn and soybean prices from around the state, with all elevators trading on the July contract. ADM in Burlington, corn 8 under at $4.33, beans 15 under at $11.64. Cargill and Eddyville, corn 17 under at $4.24. New Cooperative in Algona, corn 37 under at $4.04, beans 60 under at $11.19. Ag State in Sheldon, corn 21 under at $4.20, beans 65 under at $11.14. Ag State in Alta, corn 35 under at $4.06, beans 60 under at $11.19. Cargill in Cedar Rapids, corn 9 under at $4.32, beans 20 under at $11.59. 5-Star Cooperative in Nashua, corn 30 under at $4.11, beans 50 under at $11.29. Lincoln Way Energy in Nevada, corn 22 under at $4.19. ADM in Des Moines, beans 25 under at $11.54. New Cooperative in Red Oak, corn 30 under at $4.11, beans 55 under at $11.24. Mid-Iowa Cooperative in Green Mountain, corn 40 under at $4.01, beans 72 under at $11.07. New Cooperative in Sheraton, corn 30 under at $4.11, beans 55 under at $11.24. Walk-On Feed Ranch, corn 49 under at $3.92, beans 62 under at $11.17. New Cooperative in Glidden, corn 34 under at $4.07, beans 60 under at $11.19. Innovative Ag Services in Farley, corn 42 under at $3.99, beans 62 under at $11.17. And Cargill and Muscatine, corn 19 under at $4.22, beans 24 under at $11.55. Cash corn and soybean prices are subject to change without notice, so make sure to call your local elevator before making any market decisions.
In rural Iowa, you need reliable information. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network brings you ag-specific content like market trends, weather outlooks, and policy updates that matter to your operation, while your local station brings you community news and consistent updates on what is happening in your area. It's a partnership built for the challenges of rural life. Your farm, your local station, and your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. Find us online at iowaagnet.com.
You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Yesterday at the Iowa State Capitol, Governor Kim Reynolds signing a pair of bills into law. She was able to speak about both of those laws in her office at the Capitol and also was joined by Iowa Secretary of Agriculture Mike Naig. Here is more from yesterday's bill signings.
You know, Iowa's hardworking farmers and producers have always played a pivotal role in our state's economy and our way of life. In turn, the Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship, or IDALS, and the Department of Natural Resources, DNR, have worked tirelessly to strengthen the industry, protect consumers, and preserve our shared resources for the benefit of all. This mission is key to our state's prosperity, and it's what this legislation does so much to promote. The first bill I'll be signing today increases funding for the Choose Iowa program, putting more locally grown products on local shelves. It continues to support foreign animal disease preparedness and response efforts, and it follows through on a promise we made to the people of Iowa earlier this year, shifting water quality resources to the most effective programs and urgent needs. This means an additional $500,000 every year to the Department of Natural Resources for water quality monitoring. It means increased funding for water treatment in rural communities and conservation practices in targeted watersheds. And it means a new $25 million investment in Central Iowa Water Works, increasing the authority's nitrate capacity and ensuring safe drinking water for the 1 in 5 Iowans it serves. As I said in our announcement of this legislation in April, we want the same solution we all want the same solution on water quality, and this is how we get there. The second bill that I'll be signing today is the Iowa Farm Act, a first of its kind, the Iowa Farm Bill. This legislation expands economic opportunities by modernizing farm zoning exemptions in the state's agritourism framework, strengthens Iowa producers with provisions like sales tax exemptions for honeybees and increased confidentiality during animal disease outbreaks. It supports veterinarians who practice in rural communities and so much more. But before we go any further, I want to recognize DNR and Director Lyons, and I specifically want to recognize IDALS and Secretary of Ag, Mike Naig, for their leadership in this important industry. Mike, thank you for your just unwavering commitment to both Iowa agriculture and conservation. And with that, I would like you to say a few words about the impact of these bills that you drove through the legislative process.
Well, Governor, thank you so much. And first and foremost, let me just thank you for your longstanding commitment for being a champion for Iowa farmers and on water quality as well. So thank you so much. I also want to thank Speaker Grassley, Majority Leader Klimisch, as well as legislators that we have here from both parties and both chambers who supported this balanced approach to what we're trying to do here. Governor, I still think it's very fitting that one of the first bills that the first bill that you signed into law was the law that created for the first time long-term dedicated water quality funding. And now one of your final major legislative accomplishments builds on that commitment in a meaningful and a lasting way. So thank you very much. This farm to faucet water quality package will have a tremendous impact. The package recognizes that improving water quality requires us to work upstream and downstream from the farm to the faucet. It also demonstrates that we can make meaningful investments in water quality infrastructure and conservation without increasing the tax burden on hardworking Iowans. By better utilizing existing resources on projects and programs that are proven to work, we are modernizing Iowa's water treatment infrastructure while continuing to build on the progress already happening on the landscape. Over the past several years, farmers and landowners and hundreds of public and private partners have made tremendous progress implementing conservation practices across Iowa. There is no finish line when it comes to conservation and water quality improvement in this state, meaning that there is always more that can be done. And giving Iowans the assurance that they deserve about access to clean water by doing more of it and by doing it faster. This budget also invests in key priorities and initiatives of the Department of Ag. Choose Iowa, which you mentioned, which connects consumers with fresh, healthy, nutritious local foods in our schools and restaurants, grocery stores, and food banks, animal health and welfare efforts so we can protect companion animals as well as our livestock industry from disease threats, strengthen our preparedness and response capabilities, and support farmers who care for these animals every day, and consumer protection and food safety. So Iowans can have confidence that they're getting what they pay for and that their food safety remains safe and secure. I also want to briefly recognize the signing of the first ever Iowa Farm Act, which is another important step forward for Iowa agriculture, and appreciate the bipartisan support that this legislation also received. Every item of the Farm Act can be traced back to an idea or feedback that came directly from farmers and businesses or community roundtables as I've traveled the state. And it expands opportunities for Iowa's agriculture, reduces unnecessary regulatory burdens, strengthens rural communities, supports beginning farmers and our ag workforce, and gives farmers greater certainty and more tools to prepare and plan for the future. So I want to thank all the legislators. I want to thank all the ag groups, all of you here today for your tremendous work, all the stakeholders who helped move these pieces of legislation forward. Thank you so much. This is a very, very good day for Iowa agriculture. Wouldn't you agree? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And again, I am just so grateful for everything that you do for our state. I also want to thank the legislators who helped get these bills across the finish line, especially Senator Shipley and Representative Wolf, Representative Mumson, who helped drive this bill forward. Last but not least, I want to recognize all of the advocates who paved the way for this moment, including the Iowa Honeybee Producers Association, which is here with us today. Farm Bureau is here with us today. I'm going to get myself in trouble. Iowa Corn. I mean, we got everybody here. So we appreciate each and every one of you for all your work in these two really big bills. So on behalf of all Iowans, thank you for making your voices heard, and thank you for helping strengthen our state. And now it is a pleasure for me to sign both of these bills into law.
Every county fair has that special person or family. They are there before the gates open and long after the lights go out, helping families with projects and pitching in wherever they're needed, never asking for recognition. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, along with Wiffles Hybrids, is honoring them with the Heart of the County Fair Award. 6 winners will be recognized locally and at the Iowa State Fair, with a plaque, cash prize, VIP passes, and food coupons. Don't delay. Nominations are due June 1st. Visit iowaagnet.com to nominate today. Your local radio station brings you the pulse of your community. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network adds specialized ag content to help farmers make informed decisions. From county fairs to national ag news, we're here to tell the story of agriculture to everyone who needs to hear it. Together, we deliver a blend of local community and ag industry-focused information that rural Iowa relies on every day. This message from your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. This is the Midday Market Update on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson, joined in midday by John Heinberg of Total Farm Marketing. John, what's happening with the trade in the grains here on Tuesday?
Well, we got another difficult day going in the grain markets today, kind of being led by weakness in that soybean market and the wheat market. But just in general here, we're just seeing selling pressure the last handful of days. We're running out of bullish stories in the row crops, corn and soybeans at this time frame. Now we're breaking down technically. We're seeing money leave their long positions in terms of the hedge funds, take out some war premium, as well as decent, you're right, at this time frame, whether that's not concerning. And we're just continuing to see selling pressure. Now, corn's down about 5 cents on December corn today. Really key close coming here. We're taking out some very important support lines that could even open this up even more technically to the downside. Same with soybeans, breaking some barriers. I think a close under 11.70 July beans today would be very shaky. Currently trading at about 12 cents down, 11.68. November beans down about a nickel. You need to hold above 11.80 there, and that opens us up for some more technical selling if we break through those barriers.
What's happening on the livestock side of the markets?
Well, we got continued selling pressure in the live cattle, feeder cattle markets here, but kind of more consolidated. If you look at charts, we're just kind of trading within a range here, maybe moving back to the bottom of it. But with the volatility, it's easy to see $1.50, $2 moves in lives and $3 to $4 moves in feeders. So we'll have to kind of watch where we closed here. Typically, the August contract, mid-June on, has quite a bit of historical strength. We'll watch what cash trade comes in here as we build a little closer to that this week. Did see some early bids that came through. Now, I'm not sure if those are cash bids or were grid bids again, like we saw last week, that kind of distorted the market a little bit. So we'll have to continue to watch how the cattle market plays out here. Obviously, big thing on everybody's mind is Mexican New World screwworm, which is now only 30 miles here from the border. May get some more news and information on that today. We'll see what Secretary Rollins says at a news conference, press conference here later this afternoon. Lean hog market finally getting a little bid this morning. We'll have to really kind of watch it. It felt very soft early. Now we've kind of turned this around. Got that July contract up about $1.50. So to me, it's a very oversold market, looking for a point to possibly turn higher.
What's the best way for our listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
Sure. Give me a call anytime, 800-334-9779. Shoot me an email at john.heinberg@totalfarmmarketing.com. And don't forget the website, totalfarmmarketing.com.
Start your weekend with insight and inspiration on Weekend Ag Matters from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Every week we bring you an in-depth look at the top ag stories with a recap of the week's biggest headlines. Join us for long-format interviews with industry leaders and policymakers, giving you insights you won't hear anywhere else. And don't miss our faith-based segment with Russ Parker, Food for Thought, offering a perspective that helps bring clarity and focus to our lives. Make Weekend Ag Matters part of your weekend routine. Tune in every weekend on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
July corn down 2 3/4 at $4.41 1/4. July soybeans down 12 1/2 at $11.68 1/4. July soybean meal unchanged at $3.2650. July soybean oil down 76 cents at $78.33. Chicago wheat down 6 1/4 at $6.02 1/2. Minneapolis wheat down 11 cents at $6.41. On the Merck, June live cattle down $1.35 at $247.65. August feeder cattle down $3.30 at $348.25. June lean hogs up 63 cents at $95.65. June pork cutout unchanged at $111.20. That was a check of the midday markets on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson.
We're resuming the market conversation here on Iowa Ag Matters. Riley Smith hosting today alongside Mark Magnuson. And earlier, Mark visited with Joe Camp of Comstock for the grain comments. Now moving on to the livestock markets with the cattle and hogs. Mark?
What's happening on the livestock side of the trade today?
Right back lower for cattle futures after a rebound to start the week. They've got this technical negativity that in part coincides with the large commodity trading funds trimming from their positions. They're still net long on the live cattle and the feeder cattle futures, but they've been exiting that market by and large. There's so much headline risk, whether it's screwworm and progress or not on reopening the border with Mexico for cattle trade. It's the tariff situation and the possible executive orders in an attempt to bring down beef prices for the consumer. And then we have this nature of ongoing herd rebuilding and whether or not we're gaining any progress on that. Lower for now. We'll see if we get back to a fundamental source of support and having, like we've observed several times these last weeks, when we sell off, we get to a level that traders eventually deem to be too cheap relative to the cash. And the cash expectations are going to be more friendly from here seasonally as we advance into the summer. Same with hogs.
And Joe, with the summer months now approaching, and we, of course, just had the big first holiday of the season with Memorial Day, we start to think about grilling season. Have we have any indications that people are going to pull back at all for grilling season? Have we had any early indicators, or is it full speed ahead like normal, even with those really high prices?
I do think we have more indication of likely pushback from the domestic consumer this summer because so far the summer is kicking off with this higher fuel price situation. That really compounds the problem. And so when consumers are wanting to grill out or eat out, they're having in mind what their bill is at the grocery store and at the fuel pump lately, and that might be something where we see some resistance on the higher price cuts, those ribeyes that have gotten up to $21, $22, $99 a pound. And that may bode well then eventually in a bigger way for, say, alternative cuts and even pork as well. So something to watch for. It's the same question, though, that we had this time last year, and we didn't overall see a big pushback to stop what was a record run for cattle futures eventually.
What's the best way for our listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
It's all up at our website, comstock.com.
Joe Camp of Comstock, my guest here today. Thanks so much for the time and have a great day.
You too. Thanks, Mark.
In rural Iowa, we know you're sold on your local radio station. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network partners with local Iowa stations to deliver the latest in agriculture news, including grain elevator prices, market reports, and ag policy news. Trusted local voices, trusted ag content. This message is brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. The latest episode of Pods of Potential is out, and this month's topic is water quality monitoring. And that allows farmers to A, see if they need to make any changes to their operations and make those tweaks, or confirm that the practices they are using are working. Mark Magnuson has more.
Hello and welcome into this episode of the Pods of Potential podcast. Today's episode is episode number 31, Water Monitoring with Tony Seaman and Thomas Fawcett. Today we're diving into water quality and the importance of water monitoring. Let's now jump into the meat of today's episode. Again, we are talking water monitoring and joined by Tony Seaman and Thomas Fawcett. And Tony, you talked about it a little bit, been working on this for quite some time with Iowa Soybean Association. But could you tell us just the big picture about Iowa Soybean Association's history of leading statewide conservation and water quality monitoring efforts, please?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, going back to 2000, we worked with Agriculture's Clean Water Alliance on water quality monitoring in the Raccoon River. And this was in partnership with Des Moines Waterworks, looking at all the tributaries and subwatersheds that drain into that, trying to give a higher resolution picture of water quality to deal with the nitrate issue. As that evolved, we expanded into other locations around the state, first the Boone and Des Moines rivers, and now statewide. In 2011, we actually built our own certified water lab. And so that allowed us to bring our water monitoring in-house and expand what we were doing. And so since that time, we've kept up all the stream monitoring and the river monitoring, but we've also kind of tried to get closer to the farmer. And so what we've been gearing towards in recent years is really trying to work with individual farmers, looking at the drainage off their individual fields, tie that back to management practices to evaluate what they're doing, where they're at, and where they might want to go to address some of the issues that agriculture has on water quality.
And when you talk to farmers about water quality, kind of what are their initial thoughts when you're first meeting with them, or people that are interested in this space, in a big way? What are their thoughts in general about water quality?
Well, it's usually common that they think one of two things. The first one is that, you can look at that water. It's great. It's leaving my farm because I do no-till or I rotate or whatever their favorite practice is. I don't have a problem with water quality. Or the flip side is, I don't want you looking at that water quality because it's probably really bad. And, where I come from is, well, either of those things are true. Wouldn't you actually want to know that? For one, if it's really good, wouldn't you want to stand up and tell everybody that, hey, my water's helping the river. I'm better than what's in the river. Or if it's really bad, wouldn't you see that as a sign of inefficiency and loss and, a loss of dollars and a chance to improve your profitability and bring that back into line with what we would expect? And then the reality is once we get into it and get a few samples, generally we find most people are kind of in the middle and, some tweaks here and, they're really not that much different than everybody. And they do have an impact on the river. And then we can start to have a conversation about adaptive management and things they can do to try to continually be better and try and improve water quality so that stakeholders downstream and statewide, can know that they're doing something and that we're making progress on these issues.
And Thomas, to what Tony's talking about there, do you find the same experience when you talk to farmers on their thoughts on water quality? Do you have a similar experience?
Yeah, I think it's one of the great things about water testing is, water quality is a hard thing to measure, and it's hard for farmers to really understand what's happening, especially when we look at water that's running through the tile lines. We can see erosion We can see wind erosion, water erosion. Those are things that are visual. But when we're thinking about tile lines, it's really hard to know exactly what's happening there. And so when we look at testing, we're able to actually put a number to what's happening there. And I think one of the most powerful things is to start to show improvement. So if a grower can see that they are actually making an improvement through the things that they're doing on their farm, that's a huge win, because now we're able to actually prove to somebody that these things you're doing, the risks that you're taking, there's challenges there that you have to overcome when you're adopting these practices, but it's actually making a difference. And we can start to measure that. I think that's where we start to see real impact with connecting those dots. We're making these changes and we can see an impact.
Every county fair has that special person or family. They are there before the gates open and long after the lights go out, helping families with projects and pitching in wherever they're needed, never asking for recognition. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, along with Wiffles Hybrids, is honoring them with the Heart of the County Fair Award. 6 winners will be recognized locally and at the Iowa State Fair, with a plaque, cash prize, VIP passes, and food coupons. Don't delay. Nominations are due June 1st. Visit IowaAgNet.com to nominate today.
That's going to bring us to the close of today's show. As a reminder, you can find our daily stories that we write each day on our website at IowaAgNet.com. Just head to our homepage, and while you're there, click on the subscribe button as well. You can get signed up for our newsletter that delivers those 5 daily stories to your inbox each day. Thank you to Riley. I'm Mark Magnuson. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Iowa Ag Matters, as we will have more for you tomorrow on the show from World Pork Expo here in Des Moines. You've been listening to the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.